Welcome one, welcome all. Thank you for joining us on this fine evening for the PokÃ Podcast Collective on Collectin and Connectin. I will be your host for tonight, Sean, aka Poke Economist. I'm a collector of Pokemon cards here in Glasgow, Scotland. We also have friends from all over the world, mostly the US. Okay, just to go around the panel very quickly and introduce everyone. Jonathan, we'll start with yourself. Could you just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into Pokemon?
Yeah, my day job, I'm a financial advisor, but my late at night job is I'm an author. I've published 15 books, fiction and nonfiction, and I actually have a book coming out on September 16th, which is the 30th anniversary, and the book is called The Pokemon Gods Are Real. But I'm a late bloomer. I discovered Pokemon through sports cards. I wrote a book called The Sports Card Collectors Club, and then in volume 2, I started exploring non-sports cards. I first discovered V-Friends, and that was my gateway drug. Through V-Friends, I discovered Pokemon, and I was very late to the party, but what's so great about the Pokemon community is how much I was welcomed, even as a newbie. And so it's been an amazing 2 years, and I'm learning. I'm still learning as I go. But but I'm knee deep in Pokemon cards, and I love every minute of it.
Amazing. You mentioned there, you obviously you come from a background in sports card. It'll be real interesting to speak over the course of this how that sort of connection happens, and maybe some of the similarities, maybe also some of the differences of sports to Pokemon cards as well. For the time being, Taylor, I mean, a very impressive backdrop that you've got to say there. I think you're putting the rest of us to shame. You want to just tell us a little bit about your sort of like interest in Pokemon, how it all came about, and how long it took you to put that backdrop together, because that is mightily impressive.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, ever since I was a kid, I was playing the games. I was lucky enough, my parents got me a Game Boy. I got Pokemon Red was the first one. And so, it started there because then from there, I was like, oh, I got to collect the cards. I was collecting like the figures. I was playing with them. Like, it just, as you can see, it's just always snowballed into more and more. So, it was one of those things where I collected as a kid, got out of it for a little bit, when I went to college, and I just
Sure.
like didn't have the space or anything. And then I think 2016, I was online and I saw a Japanese fossil Mew card, and it just started it again. I forgot how much I love that, and I saw it and I was like, I'm gonna start collecting. And then from there, yeah, it's just been since 2016. Like it was very like small at like when I started, like just one card here, one card there. But now it's like every day I'm like, okay, what should I get today? What can I find? So
That's very interesting that 2016 was the year that actually brought you back into it, because it's also the year that brought me back into it as well. So I've already been collecting since I was young. Kind of here and there, dipped out of it for periods. Back in 2016 was the 20th anniversary of Pokemon. In the English TCG, there was a set released called Generations, and that again just sparked life back in it to me, and been addicted again ever since. And yourself, Matt, do you want to just give us a little bit of a background in terms of how you got into the hobby and how this sort of addiction caught hold of you as well?
So yeah, I was probably in kindergarten when I first got introduced to the games, and I just played them nonstop when I got my first Game Boy. I was Pokemon Yellow, and then later on got Red, Blue, and then just kept playing them. Then I started getting the cards, and I was like fascinated by the artwork, and that's what mostly I tried to play the game. It wasn't until around like 2015 I actually understood how to play the game, and I actually wanted to play it because it was actually kind of funny. I was teaching at I was helping out at it was like a filmmaking place up in Poughkeepsie, New York, and they were teaching. So one of the things I was helping out was with like younger kids, and they had to do a how-to video. So the kids love the Pokemon game. So I said, all right, if you want to make this video, how you have to show me how do you play this game. Once they showed me how to play the game, I was like, oh my goodness, now this makes sense. After so many years, I've just looked at the cards I didn't understand. So ever since then, I got the cards. I kind of got back into it around that time, 2015. I got some extra cards. I still have a few of my old cards from when I was a kid. And recently, in the last few years, I started collecting more of the old vintage ones because I just am fascinated, especially by the artwork of Ken Sugimori, who is like the main guy who started the artwork back in '96, I think, when Pokemon was all started out. But his artwork, the watercolor style, and everything, I have a curio cabinet full of Pokemon, every different things in there, and I've just loved it ever since.
You mentioned there that you have some of your cards from when you were a lot younger. Hasten to add, what are the condition of those cards like? Because if the condition's particularly good, they might be quite valuable these days.
Well, I was in a lot of different in my place where I was living with my dad. It like got all messed up and everything, but I managed to save a good amount of them. They were still in the binder that I have on right over around here, and a good portion. I did find a few other ones that didn't make it through, but generally, like a lot of them that I have, I look back at them and I'm like, wow, I remember when I got this pack. I remember like trying to convince my mom to get a Charizard back then, and like that never happened. But I still had a great time, keeping hold of it. Like the binder, I still have, so I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, I'm always very fascinated with these stories of whether it's a particular card, whether it's a particular item, whether it's a sports card, Pokemon card, or whatever collectible, and that sort of story that for the owner can be like attached to it, like you said there with your binder. It's always something that absolutely fascinates me. Not just with this hobby, but with the sort of collecting hobby in general. So looking forward to hopefully seeing some of those cards throughout this video, throughout the stream, I should say. Jonathan, you mentioned that you kind of come from a background of sports collecting. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about that and maybe some of the similarities that are in sports collecting to Pokemon collecting,
Yeah,
and even
I mean,
some of the
it's a very
differences as well?
similar theme that a lot of collectors share, and it's already been mentioned tonight that we fall in love with this hobby in one shape or form as a kid, and there's always this kind of period of exodus, to use a Pokemon or God term, right? And then there's a pilgrimage back, right? Something happens, and Taylor, you mentioned it. You saw one card, and then it triggers the dopamine hit, the surge, the memory, the vision, and the feeling that joy, that innocent joy you feel, right? And you want to just feel it more and more. So for me, yeah, I was a junk wax kid. Junk wax is a term for in the 1980s. Baseball cards were all the rage. They weren't really basketball cards or football cards back then, and baseball was my favorite sport. But the industry killed the golden goose. They printed so many cards that they became worthless, like they were like junk, right? And back then, the wrapping was literally made from wax paper, and then a piece of gum in it and the whole thing. So I was in the hobby from like literally kindergarten, like 1981, and I remember 1982. The older kids, I was like, first grader. The older kids on the bus, I found out in the back of the bus, they were playing this game. It's a gambling game called Flip, where if you win the hand, you get to keep all the baseball cards. And even though I was a second grader, first grader, I was like, wait, what's going on back there? I want in. And so all through elementary school, I was playing Flip in the back of the bus, and I remember the feeling you got when you lost cards. I remember the joy you felt when you won. And then my hobby became ripping packs and opening sets. But then for me, it was high school, 1988. I got involved with varsity sports, and I was really involved in some other extracurriculars, and then something and music. By the way, I had a couple part-time jobs in high school, and so something had to give, and I gave up sports cards, and then I wrote a fictional novel called The Republic Baseball League, and the main character is a college professor. He teaches political economy, but one of the character traits, I built this character. He's kind of like my alter ego. He loves sports cards, and so he mentions sports cards throughout the book, and he'll reference sports cards, teach about history. And during the pandemic, that's when a lot of people my age, I'm 52, so a lot of people who had left the hobby, the pandemic is what sparked them because they were stuck at home, they couldn't go to work or whatever, and so the old sets came out of the basement or they went onto eBay and they started to get into breaks and they started to get in the hobby again. I was busy writing books. I wrote like a half dozen books during that time. But when the pandemic ended, the first advertisement I saw for a trade show, I had been channeling this character, for months, writing all these books. I'm like, I got to go to the show. And I saw, hold on, I actually got it here. I saw this card. This is a 1964 Willie Mays Topps card. Now, Willie Mays played for the New York Giants, which from the Bronx, and it was my dad's favorite player. And as I wrote my first book, my dad's whole collection got thrown into the garbage by my grandma when they moved apartments. It's a very tragic and very common story. So when I saw this card, I actually saw two of them. And I bought both. One to be my first PC. PC means personal collection for those who are new to this. A card that you'll never sell because it's so meaningful to you. And then I gave the other one to my dad for his birthday. And then every Father's Day and birthday thereafter, I would go find a different Willie Mays card and help rebuild his PC that he didn't have anymore. And that's a story I told in that first book. And so that's what got me back into sports cards. And then I wrote the sports card Collector's Cup Volume 1 and 2, and I'm working on Volumes 3 right now. But when I started becoming a regular at all the shows. Now, 6 years ago, when the pandemic ended, I'd say that Pokemon was maybe 5% of the tables at a sports card show. And literally every few months, I'd watch that percentage go to 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 to 50 to 75. I was at a small trade show a month or two ago. It was for everything. It was 90% Pokemon. So I've watched this phenomenon take over the hearts and minds of collectors. And I have an MBA in business. I'm a financial advisor by day. I invest for a living for over 30 years. And so I love economics and I have a sense for investing. And I appreciate alternative asset classes like Bitcoin or gold and silver or fine art. And I'm looking at people hold these cards. I mean, just real quick, this is from Instagram to today. You'll appreciate this. This is a Pikachu that just sold for $518,000.
Charizard?
Charizard. That's coming. $518,000. Here's the Pikachu illustrator.
Oh yeah, I heard about that one.
$585. I mean, this is you could buy a house, right? Yeah. But long before I knew that the card sold for $500,000, I would see the Bubble Mew at a show start at 500, and then a week later or a month later be at 750, then 1,000. I'm like, this is fascinating, and I just became enamored with the community. Was so loving, so intelligent. The vendors had such energy and positivity. The whole thing became fascinated with it. And what I realized is there's a lot of to answer your final question, to get back to your question, there's a lot of similarity between the sports card market and Pokemon, a lot. However, when it comes to collecting is one thing, but it comes to investing is another thing. And here's the truth: is that Pikachu and Mewtwo, these characters never get injured. They never get into a scandal at a bar, okay? And sure. you see so many athletes where, right now a Cooper Flag rookie patch auto was just pulled in Rhode Island last night. It's the big chase card from 2026 Topps Basketball Update, and some are thinking it's worth, $4 or $5 million. But Cooper Flag, I have a chapter about him in the Flip Life, my next book coming out in December, because people forget that even as a freshman in college, he was a phenom, and his prices of his cards kept going up and up. And then here comes the final, the March Madness tournament, which is like the chance to win the national championship. And he sprained his ankle. And what happened to his prices? They went crashing down. Right? It's kind of like the Destin Rounds does a reprint, but I'm bummed. Right? But the point is, in the long run, these characters they're brands that are cherished and loved over time, and they only appreciate in value, where a lot of athletes, let's be honest, most cards become worthless. There's only a handful of GOATs, the Michael Jordan, Kobe's, that are worth a lot, where in Pokemon, a lot of the characters, there's certain characters that are definitely more popular than others, and we know who the chase cards are. We know when certain sets are more popular because, this one's got a Charizard or a Pikachu or me, whatever, But generally speaking, though, the whole universe of characters is beloved. When you play the game, you're trying to catch them all, right?
Yeah.
But in sports, Cooper Flag can soon break your heart. Your Pichu, he's never going to break your heart. No, so that's the big difference, is that I think collecting is very similar. The culture is very similar, but the investing is very different, because the prices of Pokemon cards go up and down based on different reasons. It has nothing to do with the unpredictability of sports on the field and of things that happen off the field. So that's where they're very, very different. And from my opinion, they both can go through bear markets and cycles, but Pokemon and non-sports cards, 1948 Superman might be worth more than a Michael Jordan, because Michael Jordan is still alive and well. And if, God forbid, he gets into a scandal, all of a sudden his values could drop dramatically, where that's not going to happen to my old friend Pikachu, which, by the way, this is the first Pikachu, the first and only Pikachu I've ever pulled, and it was only a few months ago, and I cherish it. So that's enough for me. But so sports cards and Pokemon cards have a lot going for it. They're both very similar, but as an investor, very, very different.
It's fascinating to hear that sort of background there, and some of those similarities and also some of those differences in that sort of perspective, as you were talking about there, with the likes of a Pikachu, not having to worry about a sort of media backlash or any sort of like social media outage, as opposed to maybe a professional athlete. That's it's something that can easily kind of slip your mind, and maybe you don't actually think about it or you don't pay any attention to it. But also a very important point. We do have a new collector joining us, Philip Collects. Thank you for your patience there. Thank you for joining us. It's great to have you. So far we've just done a quick introduction, just kind of going around everyone, speaking a little bit about our backgrounds in the Pokemon space. Would you like to just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you kind of get started out in Pokemon, and whether there's a particular sort of like sector of Pokemon now, whether trading cards, maybe figures, animations, video games that you collect yourself?
Yeah, so I was a collector when I was growing up. Belly collects. I'm also Ryan. It's always funny introducing myself to people at shows because I don't know if I should say my name or the name they know me by. But yeah, I've been collecting since I was a kid, and I know about when I stopped collecting because when I found my childhood collection from when I was a kid, kind of like around COVID 5-6 years ago, 5-6. The last cards I had that were the most recent cards were like Expedition, and I had a new 2EX from Ruby and Sapphire. So I stopped collecting, I guess, probably 2002-ish, and I found my collection 5-6 years ago. And like what I'm sure happened with so many of us, what started as a project to figure out what it was all worth kind of just dragged me right back in. And within a couple months, I was actively buying Pokemon cards and whatnot. I come from a background, I went to Michigan on a business degree, I was in real estate. I used to work for the Florida Panthers in the front office back in the day. And yeah, I have all this, pedigree to do, go to investment banking, finance, whatever. And I made the leap of faith about 2 years ago. Once I had built up enough of my Instagram account and I knew that I was selling some stuff casually here and there, I was like, I want to do this full time. I think I could live a better life doing this than, the corporate America that I was living in beforehand. So I took a leap of faith and I started full-time Pokemon selling probably January, February last year. And it's been incredible just being able to, go to choose where I'm going, go to different cities and states and go collect the cards and travel. Not having to be at the office at 8 a.m. This is where I go. This is where all the magic happens right here in my office, in my apartment. So it really has been able to provide me a beautiful life that I didn't know was possible without, doing the 9 to 5 and working, weekends and all that stuff. Even though I guess technically we're working weekends. That's the beautiful thing about what we do is that it doesn't always really feel like we're working that much. Mail days are another story, but but yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Right place, right.
That's it's very interesting kind of hearing your sort of like how Pokemon's kind of changed your life there, and it's quite a heartwarming sort of like story almost of how like maybe like for someone that's been a fan since a childhood or like a long time collector or someone that's been in from very early days of Pokemon that all of a sudden you're able to have like a family and a career that can survive and thrive off of what was at one point a pastime or a hobby, and then all of a sudden you're in a position where that can be your sort of mainstay. As you say there, sometimes it doesn't feel like work unless you're sending off 100 letters a day and everything has to get stamped and you have to double check that nothing's been put in the wrong envelope. But that's quite heartwarming to hear that story that you have, and that sort of background and what Pokemon has kind of enabled you to do for yourself and your family.
Yeah, exactly. It's it's a choice you have to make to take that leap of faith because it's scary. Walking away from stability, a cushy job, making a lot of good money, and knowing that you'd be on the right path if you stayed there, and you never know what will happen here. But yeah, it's a crazy opportunity that we're in the middle of right now. That just seeing more and more people, like I said, if they're kind of take that leap of faith, just give it a shot because there's nothing to lose really.
That's amazing. Congratulations on all your success so far, and I'm sure this is only the beginning of your operations. It will continue to grow. If we go back to yourself for a second, Taylor, you mentioned that you're sort of a collector in Japanese, most sort of Japanese product. And do you want to just kind of tell us a little bit of maybe, obviously, apart from the language barrier, some of the differences between some of the Japanese products and some of the English products, and what it was that sort of attracted to you to that side of the hobby?
I think from what I know, because I know very little about English releases, funny enough, but I think the history of like the promos, kind of like the Pikachu Illustrator, that Jonathan showed earlier, it's like stuff like that really kind of intrigues me. Like some of like the really cool, more like rare promos that, some are Japanese exclusive, some aren't. Like there's like the English print of it, but it would have been like, say, an English one that's like wide, or like it was printed way more than like the Japanese one. Like a Japanese one sometimes will only be given out at a tournament if you won like the fifth round. It's just something crazy like that where I find that like super cool. So I guess one of them that I wanted to show off because this is like one of my favorites. If I know with the glare and stuff, you can kind of see it.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
But
Sweet
yeah,
card.
this is like a one of the ones that would be like a lottery one in Japan. Whereas I don't know, someone can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's fairly English too, but I know in Japanese, I think there's right now maybe I think the pop is like 50 or something like that. So
Wow.
it's like a
Wow.
pretty rare one. Maybe the English one is too. I don't know, but yeah, there's just things like that really kind of like get me. And some of the like exclusive Japanese art too is just stuff that I'm like, oh, this is so good. Like, and then yeah, I'll just go wild with that. I'll find out like something about the history, and then I'll just be like on a bender of just figuring out, okay, where did these come from, and how can I get all of them?
I
That's
have a
it.
question, Taylor. I have a question. Is your
Yeah.
obsession with with the Japanese? Where does that come from? Does it come from it's because like in this one case you mentioned that card is so rare; it's only one of 50. Is it because in the states you find that it's cool being a Japanese collector because it's so unique, because it's so rare? Is it because of like what is it about those cards? Because there is kind of this like rivalry between like nations and the collectors and the sets themselves, and so like and I've always found that in America the Japanese packs are always cheaper because they're not as popular.
Yeah.
But yet you're a collector who actually doesn't even want the English stuff. You prefer the Japanese. So can you just explain that to us, like where your love for it came from, and is it true? Are Japanese not as valuable in America, but yet in Japan, of course, they are? So how did that arbitrage? Just take me through all that.
Yeah. Well, then it goes all the way back to when I was a kid because I somehow, speaking of like earlier, like the Japanese fossil Mew, I somehow got one when I was a kid. I don't know, like I think it was at a card shop, and it was a Japanese card, and like you just didn't really see them anywhere. I was convinced it was the only one in the world, which we know it isn't. But when I was a kid, I was like, this is the only fossil Mew, like Japanese one ever. And so it just gave me this fascination of like I need to hunt down like Japanese cards, and like I would look in the old like magazines where they'd tell you like, oh, the Charizard's worth this much, this is worth this much, and every now and then I'd see like there was like the Lily Pad Mew like promo and stuff like that. So I'd get like these little snippets from like even English magazines of like Japanese cards, and I would just be like, whoa! It just like blew my mind. And
Right.
so since a kid, I
I
think
love
that
it.
just ignited it. You
Yeah,
know?
it's sort of like you're a true relic hunter, right? Like the
Yeah.
idea of finding these precious gems that are so rare because you had this one moment as a kid that left such an amazing impression on you that it gave you a niche in the market to super collect. That's a great story, dude. I love it. I
Thanks,
love it.
thanks, man.
I'm glad I asked.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I wish I would have, kept it in a binder like Matt did, but I thought it was better to hide it under the rug. So like I would go in my living room and like keep it under the rug. So I was like, this,
Oh,
no one will ever find it here. This is how I'll keep it safe.
That's clever.
That's
I love it.
incredible. The of all
oh,
these sort of cards keeping techniques, under the rug is definitely not one that I've heard until tonight. So thank you for that.
yeah. Never
That's
heard that one.
fantastic.
For
In
sure.
terms of the Japanese products, over here in the UK, there has been a sort of rise in the interest in Japanese product, particularly as the English version of the product hasn't become available as regularly, and there's been difficulties in supply. Have you found that yourself in terms of when you're collecting either specific cards or sets? That all of a sudden there has been that rise, maybe either some of the prices or the demand for those products has risen.
Yeah, I think well the demand definitely, on the Japanese side has gone up like a lot. But I still find them like readily available. I think as long as like you're just searching far and wide. I mean, cuz that's what I did when I started. I was like I'm going to look in every corner of the internet to be able to find these. And so as long as you're just, I mean, and sometimes it takes a lot of work to find like a certain product, but I think if you go look through 90 pages, on like a Japanese card shop, you'll find a copy of the one you want. Maybe not the condition you want or, whatever, but it just takes being diligent, I think, and like, really, making connections too. Cause it's like, I met a lot of really cool, people in this hobby. Shout out Felly. And that have like helped me like find cool cards, or like we've hooked each other up with like good deals, or we just kind of set something out there like, hey, if you see one of these, like let me know, and so we kind of have like little search parties almost for product and cards sometimes too, and that really comes in handy.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. Similar here in Scotland, like we've got groups that we sort of kind of work within ourselves to like find products, or if there's like particular products are coming out on certain dates, we'll have maybe like a divide or split in us going, okay, if some of us go to these shops and some go to other shops, it just gives us a better chance to find the products. Matt, I want to bring yourself back in very soon. First of all, Philly, kind of speaking on that sort of topic we just mentioned there with the rise in sort of demand for Japanese products, as a seller yourself, have you found that? Is there anything that you've noticed in that sort of market?
Yeah, well, I first want to give a shout out to my boy Taylor, because he's one of the first people that really got me into the Japanese exclusive niche market. I mean, I call it niche, but I mean it's grown so much now to the point where it's not really
niche to us.
Yeah, right. Niche to us, you guys. I mean, Taylor and I have been in the trenches for years looking for this stuff that is so lips in the top 100. Like he showed his play promo. I got some of my play promos here now.
Oh wow.
Yeah, these are all the same sub promos. And two of my
put them up a little higher.
Let's get the light on them too. Yeah, there's the Rayquaza.
Oh wow.
Groudon.
Yeah, so this is a set, and then this one is the Jirachi DX. I actually got the other two that are part of this set from Taylor probably 3 years ago. The
Oh, very cool.
Wow.
And I actually just recently moved on from them, literally in the last month. But those are two of my favorite cards in my collection. And I'm sure it's a topic that we'll start to reach, but part of that decision was, I can't justify keeping everything that I've collected over the past 4 or 5 years, because obviously I'm a collector first, and I still have a massive PC, but I got to pick and choose these days because it got a little too big. But yeah, going to the question, the Japanese exclusive market, as it used to be something that where you'd go on eBay, you'd find crazy steals for stuff that has such low pop, even though it's hard to find them, you'd be able to find them for prices that, like, I'm sure it had an influence on Taylor as well, is that you can find the same artwork in Japanese versus English potentially for some non-exclusive stuff for way cheaper. And so it was a way to expand your collection on a budget originally for me, and it turned into me falling in love with some of the Japanese textures from XY. Black and white era are just noticeably more vibrant than the English counterparts. And it's just a whole other can of worms that you get tied into the Japanese market. But yeah, they're beautiful.
Brilliant. That's fascinating to hear. Matt, on a sort of perspective, as a sort of collector and someone that's kind of came back into the hobby in recent years, do you have a sort of like perspective or thoughts on maybe like English products, Japanese or Chinese products? Are you quite happy with anything, or is it mostly like sort of English product that you look to focus on?
I mostly focus on the English product, and going to the Japanese product, I've noticed the difference in the backs. Like if you were to look at the back of the American card, it has stayed the same since '96 when they first released. I noticed because I've gotten a few Japanese cards from now, and way back then they changed the back completely on that. I didn't realize that. Have you guys noticed like the differences in those? Because I wanted to ask about.
There we go.
That's like the new one, right? That's like the new one.
Let me
And
find
then the old one, and the old one changed. See, that's what I remember.
It's called the old bags, the Pocket Monsters.
Right, because I have an old one I have a few old ones. I have Misty's Tears, from the Gym Heroes set in Japanese, and I got the American edition. Just I wanted the cool perspective. One was banned out here, and they had to change it. That's what I loved a lot about the history of the older card sets and the vintage sets, is that there's all these little different things that they had to make difference over here in America to censor it. I noticed that because when I was growing up, it was so much different. There's episodes of Pokemon that I believe about 2 or 3 that were never shown here, but if you go out, find it on the internet, you can find them and watch them. But I collect mostly a lot of the American edition ones cards, and I got kind of back into it with the Pokemon Go set that came out because I was like, oh wow, this is pretty cool. And I'm like, I started collecting. I'm like, what I loved a lot about them was that they had a lot of the 151 Pokemon, and I played the games from 151 to all the way to Generation 3. So those are the ones that I really understood. So getting into Pokemon Go, I was like, oh, I know this Pokemon, I know this one. And then after Generation 4, I was like, I have no idea. Now I found out there was a Pokemon that was a bag of trash, which I didn't realize. And I'm just like, they really. And then I think about it, I go, well, there was Muck and Grimer. There wasn't much creativity with those guys. They were just sludge. So I always thought it was interesting how the different Pokemon have evolved and the different how there's like 1,000 of them. So getting all those ones, and what really got me back into focusing on my collecting is looking at my old binder, seeing what I remember in my head that I had as a kid, and recollecting those old cards that I lost, like this old Zapdos card. I remember as a kid I got this card, and I remember getting this card in a pack. I go to find my binder years later, and I'm like, where the heck is the Zapdos? I'm losing my mind because I can't find it. So I went online. I learned about TCG Trader, TCG, where you get the cards and everything. And I'm like, oh my god, I can get this. So that's what I've been loving about getting back into the hobby is I'm finding old cards that I've lost, and it's just so much fun. And recently I started collecting more of the promo cards that I never got to get for the Pokemon the first movie. It just that's what's drawing me back into collecting the cards from playing the games, because I never really lost my interest in Pokemon. From when I was a kid all the way through high school, college, I was playing even after college. And one of the things that I just picked up the other day is I got those sets that has the 3 starters in it. This is what I love about them the most, is that I picked up packs that had the first 3 generations. Exactly, yes. And I just bought extra ones, but I got all the ones that I really was
Oh,
excited
wow.
about. So
Nice.
That is awesome.
this is I'm just so happy I have all 3 of the starters.
There we go.
See, this is what I loved about it. And just looking at the artwork, like I mentioned before, the artwork in the first generation, you're seeing the 8-bit pictures of the game. It brings me back to when I was a little kid, just booting up the Game Boy, playing the game for hours. And that's really what got me into the thing, because even if I don't play the card game, I just can take time and just look at the artwork that these people do, and I just remember oh wow, I remember this Sudowoodo thing in Generation 2 when I had to go get the squirt bottle and stuff like that. These are the things that's what I love about the whole collection, is these little Easter eggs they hid in the pictures that I love about it, and that's what gets me wanting to try to find more of these cards.
Hey Matt,
Yeah.
question for you.
Yeah.
Taylor has only showed us, I'm sure, a very small part of his PC, but they're all slabbed, authenticated PSA cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not just sacred relics to him; they're monetary assets because they've been authenticated and graded. Everything you're showing us are just like the raw cards. I'm curious,
Right.
where are you at with grading? Do you buy graded cards? Do you buy raw cards and grade them, or do you prefer them kind of the old-fashioned way, the authentic old-fashioned cards? Where are you at with grading?
With grading right now, I like to find cards that really are meaningful for me. And it's not that I want to sell them. I want to preserve them in the slabs because they look very nice and that they can be displayed. And that's what I've done in my apartment. I got a 3D printer. I started printing up little pieces like card displays. On my nightstand, I have about 5 or 6 cards that I have set up in my living room area, my kitchen area. I have a curio cabinet that has a few other graded cards. So a few graded cards I like to get. I won't go too crazy because I know the value for the raw cards are usually a little bit more inexpensive versus buying the graded one. So a lot of the times that's what I do.
Ryan, I kind of passed the same question to you with a slight different angle. I know there's a collector inside you, but there's also the business person inside you. So maybe break it down. Are both the collector and investor only PSA graded slabs, or where are you at on that?
So I'm split right between. So as a collector, it was a priority for me to be able to have the card raw. And I know I could buy 3 or 4 different cards raw for the price of the PSA 10 in my favorite one. And so what started out as a raw collection primarily, when I found good deals on slabs back 3-4 years ago when it was reasonable grade, I was still grading consistently, until last year. So I definitely have my fair share of slabs that I've built over the years, and as I've transitioned to making this, a profitable business, so that support my lifestyle. But my collection is very, very heavily shifted towards raw still. Maybe not in terms of total value, but in terms of volume. I've got probably 30 binders full of Pokemon cards. I have master sets from WotC and old WotC sets, English and Japanese. I've just been building this over the years when it was more attainable to do so. And part of that was because I believed in the hobby. I believed in Pokemon as an investment. I mean, the prices we're seeing now is what I was hoping it would be in 20 years a lot of the time. But I spent most of my disposable income building what I love to collect, and it turned out to just be I don't want to say it was all, I knew this was going to happen. But I believed in the product, and I believed in the hobby, and so to the point where even some of the raw cards that I've been collecting over the years, I go through my binders now and I see something that's really making I can't even justify keeping this card here raw because it's worth so much, and even a PS8 or whatever. So yeah, it's kind of just like a constant, like there's certain stuff that I collect that I would rather have it raw because I know that if I get it in a slab, I'll be motivated to sell it. Versus keeping it raw in the not as great condition, I can build master sets for a fraction of the price as even a couple of them in PSA 10. So that's a collector and me favors a lot of the time raw cards, just because of the volume.
In terms of what you mentioned there, with like the sort of preferring raw cards over the graded cards, so to speak. Also, PSA at this point is tremendously popular. I think in London they're looking at opening up a PSA base. The price of the graded card as well to get any card graded. Back in 2021, I think it was, myself and my friends sent some cards over to the States from here in Scotland. And I think we were paying roughly around £7.50 per card at that point, which roughly translates to $8 or $9. At this point we're talking about a complete multiple, a 5 times potentially multiple, to get a very basic level of grading. Does that sort of play into the sort of thought process of like the sort of business aspect of it as well?
Absolutely. I mean, I was someone that was sending anywhere from 50 to 100 cards on a monthly basis for the last 2 years to, I haven't sent a sub in anywhere since last November. I actually forgot about my last sub. I just got it back in the mail last week, if you could imagine. Which company it came from. But yeah, my buddy told me, because I never send it myself. I always send them with guys that do this, compare the cards, whatever. And he hit me up. I was like, I had no idea those cards were still grading. And so it has absolutely played a role in what kind of cards I keep seeing over slab. I'm lucky that I've created a place for myself in the market where part of what I do is focus on selling really clean, minty, gradable singles so that it's still worth it for some specific levels of cards that you can still justify paying X dollars to get this up and get a score for it. But I haven't been grading cards, nor have I been consistently growing my slab PC in almost a year now. And that has contributed to 2 things. Is one, it's easier for me to justify, selling some stuff because I don't have it in such an expensive investment that I put into it. Yeah, it's changed for sure for a lot of people that have been boxed out of being able to grade consistently. And also, there's plenty of lower value cards where it doesn't make sense to even bother sending it in anymore because, So I have a great pile right now. I have over 100 cards in it right now. It's sitting up. And I'm waiting for the day maybe the pastures are greener and our favorite company opens up the fields to a more reasonable entry level. But yeah, I just can't justify sending them in right now. And I'd rather keep them than sell them for when the day comes. And I'm at a place where I can now, which is beautiful. But yeah, it's very tough to differentiate now.
All right, let me ask a question to Sean. You've been doing a great job hosting, by the way, but let me give you a chance to answer a question. So Ryan's just talking about how he can't send any cards in because everyone's been, has had a moratorium on new submissions, and there's a backlog in the millions, like 12 million cards, right? So some are saying that well, look, in the last few weeks, prices have started to decline, but up until then, over the last 6 to 12 months, prices have been rising. And I wonder, do you think, Sean, that's because people couldn't spend their money on grading, so they just bought more cards, and that kept the market going higher? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. To kind of give the example of when we sent our cards away, it was pre-COVID. It was just before PSA closed their doors completely. They weren't accepting submissions. They weren't grading cards. It was a complete shutdown, like the whole world was going through as well at that point. Um, and when we sent our cards away, we kind of knew that it could be a while before we got them back. We didn't realize quite how long it would be. It ended up being just over 3 years before we
Wow.
got our cards back.
Wow.
At that point, it's safe to say we paid the money out. I didn't think that I was getting those cards back. To me, at that point, it wasn't so much a case of the value of the cards that were associated with it. As I mentioned there, the grading price that we paid at that point was actually very fair. It was very low, particularly in comparison to 2026 prices. For me, the biggest concern was some of the subjects we've already touched on today. For example, you mentioned like a story attached to a card. A lot of those cards that I sent, I feel like I had a personal story attachment to them. And there was reasons behind, having that card and owning that card, regardless of the value of it. I was more concerned about that as opposed to getting the card back. In saying that, some of the cards that I did send away when it came back, I was quite pleased with the value of some of them. But we also noticed a dip when we did get them back 3 years later. So I think that would have taken us to about 2024. At that point, COVID is being gone, the world's kind of picking up back to normal. Pokemon cards were still difficult to get, but not as difficult to get as they'd been for a number of years by that point. And as a result, a lot of the value of the cards had dropped significantly. At this point, I was obviously out a little bit of money in terms of the price I'd paid to get the cards graded. My hope was maybe sell off a couple of them so that would offset the price of the rest of the grading. But kind of looking at the prices and the charts of the prices and how it ebbed and flowed over the years, I kind of it didn't feel like the right time at that point in order to sell. And in particular this year with the 30th anniversary coming up, we are kind of seeing that spike again, where whether it's raw cards or whether it's graded cards, the prices are soaring significantly for a lot of things. Not everything, but for a lot of things. And again, some of those cards that either I sold earlier on, sold when the cards came back, or some of the cards that I hold on to, there's been a big difference in prices. To give you one example, there was a Zekrom card from, I think it was the Black and White base set series, so that was maybe a 2011 card. I think I'd had PSA 8, which is kind of anything lower than a PSA, you're in trouble. Roughly approximate to, you guys will know better than me, but I kind of roughly approximated to a decent condition or a good condition raw card. And I think I sold that for about £50. And then within maybe a couple of months of that, the price absolutely spiked. There is a little bit of that, and it was one of the questions that I kind of posed to you guys as well during the course of this. Have you experienced that yourself, where you've maybe had an item, obviously yourself, operating a business, you'll be used to like things coming and going. It does, after all. Pokemon does say in the back of the cards. I'll see if I got one here. Oh, it doesn't. Pokemon does say trading card game on their products.
Yeah.
So, part of that sort of trading process, have you ever let go of something that you kind of live to regret, or is there something you've get let go that you kind of wish you'd just maybe held on that a little bit longer on? Jonathan, we'll start with you on that one, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. Hold on, I'm going to show you them real too. They're right here. Hold on.
In the meantime, to answer one of our chat questions, I do have some hockey cards.
So they're
very
awesome.
cool. Connor cards?
There are two concepts. There's there's buyer's remorse, where sometimes you buy something and regret it, and there's also seller's remorse. So in my first book about sports cards, the first half of the book was about investing. A chapter about how Warren Buffett would buy sports cards, a chapter how a hedge fund would buy sports cards, a chapter how a day trader would do it. So there were different investment chapters, and then I put my own money to work and I try to explore which ones would be successful or not. And Kaboom is a very, very popular opinion design, right? So this was a not a famous player yet, but this is a Brody Breck Kaboom card. And then, of course, I'm sure everyone knows this guy. This is John McEnroe, one of the most famous tennis players of all time.
That's incredible.
And one of the first live breaks I ever did was tennis, and then I pulled this, which of course they got me addicted to live breaking for a period of time. And because of the value of them, and because I was constantly buying more product, I felt like I should flip them and then use that money to buy more stuff. And then just after they both sold, and they sold for pretty good prices actually, I regretted it. And it took me I waited about 2 or 3 years, and I bought back this one for the exact price that I paid for it. It was like a wash. And with the McEnroe, I wound up buying this one for like half the price of what I eventually sold it for. I just got lucky, I guess. The prices had declined, but it wasn't about that. I would have probably paid more because it's a special card. I featured it in my book. Why would I sell it? And I was glad to get it back, and now it's like PC. I'll never sell it again. And I thank the sports card guide. So yes, so it's happened to me, but thankfully I've been able to retrieve my 2 biggest mistakes.
Brilliant. At least you've managed to rectify, your initial sort of decision there in your kind of place that you're happy with it. Matt, same question to you. Have you ever maybe let something go or parted ways with, a part of your collection you wish you still had?
So growing up, my dad was all against me trading away my cards because he knew growing up as himself, he collected comic books as a kid. So he had a lot of the golden age of comic books, and so he lost a lot of his old comics that he had, and he really wished he never got rid of them. So one of the things he never let us, my sister and I, do is trade our cards away, and that stuck with me because it's hard because I buy this card, it becomes something personal to me. I have an attachment to it. I have a grade 7 Charizard that I forgot because back when I was a little kid, I wanted to get a Charizard so bad, but I found one eventually in a card shop. I was hemming and hawing about getting it, but I just went and bite the bullet and I bought it, sent it out, graded, and it's on my display with the rest of my other Pokemon stuff in my living room. I have like a little shrine to Pokemon with all the game boxes that I had from Pokemon Yellow all the way to Ruby and Sapphire, and I have with the game boxes. That's something my dad was. He was just, in a way, a pack rat, kind of hoarder way, but it was in those ways I preserved all those things in a nice decorative way. So getting rid of or selling, it's not in me to let go. Because it's just they have some personal meaning to me.
That's brilliant. The kind of very similar to your sort of thoughts there. Like over the course of time, there's only very few things that have one of which we'll come on to in a minute. We do have a lot of love for Taylor comments right now. Quality Bear, can we get a wellness check on Taylor? He hasn't moved in 10 minutes. So Taylor, it's now your time to shine. Have you got a sort of personal story or any particular item of your collection you may have let go and left to regret?
Oh, speaking of wellness check, do I have to answer this one? No, I'm kidding. Okay, wait. For Matt, I wanted to show you this. I mean, it's not the English one, but yeah, this is one of my favorite games.
Oh, wow.
That is beautiful.
But I had to get that graded because that yellow was always one of my favorite too. So I had to show you that.
That's super cool.
See, that's what I loved about those games because I never had any. I couldn't take my games out to play with other friends, so my father got a Game Boy with the games, and we traded together so I could be able to collect all 150 of the creatures. And it was
how much is that worth?
Fun, I know that.
Graded video games is a big niche in the hobby. Do you know how much that's worth? That's worth like $50,000 or something crazy?
Yeah, I don't think so. That one is sealed, which is really rare for Japanese games because they never came with a seal. So it's basically sealed, but it's unopened. So it makes it even more rare because the Japanese ones they would just sell them like a box on the shelf. So
that's so cool, dude.
But so that's definitely. I'm sure it's worth maybe a couple thousand, but I'm not sure. What one like that would go for at the moment, but
it's beautiful.
That would be one. Thank you. That would be one I would regret if I sold that. I know that I would freak out at myself. So that one's not going anywhere. But I mean, I guess I was running an eBay. I was doing my eBay as my main business. I guess I didn't mention it, but it's I do personal training on the side as well. And so one of my goals was like to have an eBay shop, and I think this is like 2023, and I wanted like to have every week like an auction block, and I would just go, and I was like, I'm gonna get as many cards as I can, grade them, have like a cool variety of like different eras, and try to do this every single week. And I did that for a year and a half, every single week, didn't miss a week, always had an auction block of 20 or more cards. And so, of course, there was some in there, and I know, and Felly was always
every week, baby. I said every auction that you put up every week.
Yep. I appreciate you, man. I know, and so it was super cool, like the support that I got, the friends that I made, like just the connections through that. But I mean, all the cards I sold basically went towards other cards and stuff that you see, you know. So it's like it always went towards something else. So I obviously there's cards I regret selling, but it like went towards something else that I love. So it's really hard because it's kind of like it's like I got something super cool because of it. And I think the main thing that I feel is I just want to collect literally every single card. And that's the hardest part is like, okay, well, how am I supposed to do that?
Yeah, I think that's maybe something that, 10, 15 years ago may have been a little bit easier than it is in 2026 with the curiosity, for lack of a better word, of how fast some of these sets and products can come out. It feels like a day doesn't go by where I don't want to open up the internet and all of a sudden there's leaks or news about a new product that's soon to arrive in shops. To start off another supermarket battle to get to whether it's a Target or an Asda here in the UK, to hopefully get your hands on some products. Is there anything that's kind of like come through your groups recently or over the past that you're thinking, kind of wish I kept that?
Yeah, I mean, well, the easy answer for Taylor is the Lugia and Hoa that he sold me.
Ooh, that sounds a story.
Those are nice.
There's the reaction. Oh man, that was a good one. No, I mean, I've been doing this to the point. I have a business background. I track every purchase, every sale, every trade that I've ever made that's not at the show in person, as that's possible, on Excel. So I can look back at any time and see the stuff that I bought for X dollars and see the stuff that I sold for X dollars in 2022, 23, which is how I found that I remembered that I bought the Hoa and Lugia from Taylor, because when I finally moved up from that, I was like, wow, sorry, buddy. but yeah, I mean, it's I'm honestly, I'm not going to give you a concrete answer because I've, as much, kind of like what Taylor said, everything that we've sold has gone into another grail that ended up 3, 4, 5 times what it was when we got it. And I look back at all the things that I bought as I'm deciding to sell them now, and I'm choosing to focus on the ones that I kept this long instead of the ones that I sold early because there's more of them. Because I hoarded them. I spent every dollar disposable for 3 years on more Pokemon cards and else. And obviously, there's a lot of major losses from selling too early, even from like January and February this year versus maybe April or May. Like I sold, I'll give you one. I sold my gift box via PSA 10, which is another, it's the whole Phantom's English copy. I sold that for probably $3K, and within 2 weeks of me selling it, there was 2 sales at $9,000. And that was just the state of the market that we were in March and April, because I got that card for $500. And in my mind, this is, as much as it is a collector and me loving to collect what I love, I could buy a raw copy of that card for $500, which I did. And I sold the PSA 10 because it's also supporting, like I said, this is what I do for a living now. So I have to be reasonable about it. But that kind of brings back the love of having all these raw cards, maybe even not the best condition, but because I want to have a version of it in my collection. But like I said, for all the losses and all the big mistakes that we've made, for us being in this position, being on this podcast, having been doing this, there's plenty of wins that counteract the losses. And the stuff that we decided to keep has been.
That's a very interesting perspective on it, and I think a lot of times, particularly come from the background of a collector, sometimes whether it's a raw card that could be worth a little bit of money, or maybe a product you didn't quite get around to opening, that all of a sudden you look at the price of it and you think, wow, I could reinvest this and be able to get hold of quite a lot for it. Back in, I think this was maybe around 2019, there was a Pokemon set that came out, an English set called Evolving Skies. I'm sure a few of us may have heard of this. In Edinburgh, in Scotland, I went along to a little sort of pre-release event, and at that point, these events weren't so as popular as they are now. I think now they get like 40 people each day over the course of 2 days. Back then, there might have only been 10, 15 of us. So I got this little kit, and in the kit, you get 4 packets of cards. And within the first packet, the first 4 packets of the kit, I got 2 of the chase cards from the entire set. One was a Glaceon VMAX All Art, and the other one was a Minbreon VMAX All Art. Within the space of a few packets. And I paid roughly, I think it was around £25 for this kit. And for me, I was like, you know what, if I sell one of these cards, that completely offsets my day. I've had a nice time, and then, I can go and buy some more cards next week or whatnot. So I decided to sell the Minbreon card. And I think back then it was just under £300 for it. Safe to say, that card is worth a little bit more now, raw or graded. Yeah, Polly, you're joining us. Welcome in. We are fast approaching the end of the podcast here. We have got under 4 minutes left. So just very quick fire round. While I get around everyone one more time. We spoke a lot about Pokemon, spoke a lot about our collections. Very simple question. Is there a standout Pokemon from any generation, any part of the series, whether it's Sun and Moon, whether it's Sword and Shield, whether it's back in Red and Blue? Jonathan, do you have a favorite Pokemon?
I have to say Destined Rivals, because I had started researching Pokemon for like 6 months before I actually bought my first ETB. And it was by chance. My wife had me pick up a prescription at the Target pharmacy, and it was being stocked. There was this huge line almost out the door. And I said to the last guy in the line, I'm like, what's everyone waiting online for? And he's like, ETB drop. I'm like, Pokemon? He's like, yeah, dude. I'm like, which one? He's like, Destined Rival. I'm like, it's a good set, right? He goes, come on, look at this line. So I just got online and I bought 2 ETBs. And I literally opened that set knowing nothing about the history. I had no YouTube videos of self-help. I knew special illustration rare, full art. I knew nothing. But because of that experience, I fell in love with Pokemon. So I guess for me, my favorite set is Destined Rivals. But I'm sure, Ascended Heroes might have, more chase cards and all that stuff. But for me, Destined Rivals is the set that really got me into the hobby, and that will probably always be my favorite.
Destined Rivals, I got for me as well. Very quickly, I loved the Team Rocket set back in the 90s, and for me that was a continuation of that. Matt, have you got a favorite Pokemon or set?
My favorite Pokemon overall would be Squirtle. That's what I actually got. When I was a kid, I got it watching the show. I got my own pet turtle. Passed away, but eventually I got another turtle. She's still with me, but Squirtle would have to be my favorite Pokemon of all. And I actually have a cool tattoo of all 3 of the evolutions.
Oh, that's incredible.
Oh, by the way, I'm not sure I heard the question. I went with set. My favorite character is Pichu, by the way.
That's all right. That's
Pichu,
right.
yeah. That's awesome.
Destined Rivals is my favorite set too, so I'm good with that. Just over 2 minutes left, Philly.
So I'm gonna go with the 5-10% of the population that is super basic. I'm all Charizard. It is anyone that follows me that knows me, like my personal like 10 to 15%.
Oh wow!
Is
beautiful
this right here? Yeah, I mean I'm very very heavily invested in this guy. I've got a Charmeleon Raptor shirt on right now.
Oh, that's awesome.
We got some great legendary. It's easy, Charizard. And real quick, set 151. I wasn't super into the modern stuff when I got back into the hobby around COVID, and the 151 set is really the only set in all of Ground Secret that is like gold that I ripped heavily. I had like 3 or 4 master sets in English and Japanese.
That's incredible.
It reminded me, like what Matt was saying, those original nostalgia from the original Pokemon from when we were kids. I'll let Taylor hop in.
As amazing what 151 has done for the hobby as well. It's just rejuvenated like a lot of like people that maybe fell away from it, like a lot of us have. And what I would also say is, with 5 Pokemon fans here, or 5 people that have an interest in Pokemon, there's a very high probability that one person would say Charizard as their favorite Pokemon. So you can't say they didn't see that coming.
It might be more than 10%, so that was natural.
Taylor, unfortunately, we've left you less than a minute here. But last word to you: do you have a favorite Pokemon or a favorite Pokemon set?
Ampharos.
Yeah.
Love that one.
Ampharos my favorite. That's always been my favorite. Like ever since Gen 2 came out, and in the Game Boy, Thunder Punch all day, just non-stop Thunder Punch. I mean,
I would add that caused absolute nightmares if you picked the water Pokemon Totodile in Gold
Yep.
Silver. Absolute nightmares as a player. Jonathan, I don't want to get into too much of your time. You're up next with another program. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about that real quick?
Yeah, the show's called Rip Sessions. It's every other Tuesday, and it's sort of like your virtual local card shop. Just go into a local card shop, sit at a table, see who shows up, ripping cards, sharing stories. And if no one shows up, it's just me by myself. But either way, cards will be ripped,
Awesome.
I promise.
What are the Jonathan?
Awesome.
It's on the Sports Card Collectors Club website, and also in the same one right here, Collecting and Connecting Network.
Perfect.
Awesome.
I look forward to that, Jonathan. Thank you all very much for joining us tonight. Hopefully, you've enjoyed it as much as I have. And thank you, everyone, for watching and taking part. This is something we're looking to get going in the regular, so if you have enjoyed it, please subscribe, please leave a comment, and please follow us all individually as well. And check out Jonathan's stream, that's the most important thing. Check out Collectin and Connectin with Jonathan coming up there right next. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. See you again all soon.
See you later.
Bye.
All right.